stuff and sort of set it up. But I have to do this quickly. Oops. This is a really early work of mine. Let me get rid of this. Okay. And it's really, this early work is like a lot of duality between sort of nature and the nature of man. I hope this goes quickly. Uh-oh. How do it's not advancing. There we go. A little close-up. But just sort of, John wanted me to talk a little bit about some materials early on and things like that. This is glass and walnut and steel and earth and hemp. And where do I point it? Okay. I just look away and it comes up. All right. Another earlier. These things are sort of like, in a weird way, these, I was thinking of these sort of the organic forms as almost sort of like your DNA encoding, sort of these aspects of our personality that represent the rational and the irrational. And they always had this stand that had to sort of suspend them for them to exist in our world. And these are like microorganisms and stuff like that. I was looking at a lot of parasitic forms. And it came to my attention that I was sort of favoring the organic side and trying to embody them with some type of animate them in a way and give them some life. And in a way I was sort of selling myself short and cutting off the sort of rational side. So this is one of the first pieces where that duality doesn't play favor to the organic organism and starts to animate that. But once that happened, it was no longer sort of a duality, but like a multiplicity and a fusion between the two I was after. It's an early piece from Scout Egan. And that multiplicity was sort of opened up. It was no longer a black and white or good and bad, but like a gray. All the gray areas were truths as well. And there's aspects of film and photography and these latex skins that I was working with that the viewer kind of looks through to see what's going on. I had these early notions of how to engage the viewer and break them from, not break them, but I felt like if you could get them to sort of break their knees and engage the work, that it would help to induce a curiosity and that they were in a position of comfort to sort of explore the work. And these are just sort of like little dwellings, these little structures built out of canvases and paintings. In a sense, trying to take objects that I've been working with and start to look at them and see what other characteristics and attributes that they had that I wasn't aware of in their making. So sort of to try and construct and see what else I can, what other properties they have. And that opened up into some more of these like dwellings or things where you go behind the canvas. The canvas is coming off the wall. And light and motion and balance and other aspects of sort of mechanical attributes are coming in. Timers, things of this nature. A lot of times really working with still painting in a weird way, and things like Buster Keaton, really early Buster Keaton films where he's like diving through the picture frame, and early stuff of like Giotto and that illusion of the painting, having the painting be the viewer's projection of what that might be. So these are some early forms. This is another machine, and it's hard to kind of see here, but I guess this is a pointer. Aha. So there's an oscillating fan that blows this sort of diaphanous pillow of air back and forth here across the piece. And here it is kind of underneath. They're really sort of playing with color and using color to try and induce like a play within the viewer and get them active and engaged in the piece. And then this is one of the first sort of inflatables. I didn't make this, but it's just sort of working with a weather balloon. And then there's this little guy up here, sort of in making Mother Machine and filling those kickballs and stuff with concrete. I found myself covered in concrete and found that the process was kind of absurd. I had been attaching motors to balloons and all this kind of absurd activity. And I started to, those those pieces were done up at Provincetown, and I met a good friend of mine, Dwayne Slick, who's now a grad painting teacher at RISD, and he turned me on to all of this Native American literature about the trickster and stuff like that, and the coyote and stuff. And I had, although I could relate to the trickster, I couldn't really relate to it in an in a Native American sense. But later, when I was covered in concrete a year later or so, and trying to figure out how to get the air out and the aggregate in and how to support these, and it seemed like a really simple idea, but kind of a messy one. This like clown muse, sort of a trickster muse, this little naked angel clown. And here he is on a monorail where you kind of control his speed. He flies around the room, he kind of bangs into the walls. He's got this weird umbilical cord that rubs up over that balloon and sets into motion these undulations. And a lot of humor sort of progressed out of that play and curiosity. Here he is, he's about 90 feet of track or so running around the space. Now this next one is using the muse, my little clown muse again. And this piece, sort of like using the clown as a vehicle for transcendence, like allowing myself to make a fool of myself, was sort of what this trickster was for me. And here's a little video, you can click this. I'd never done rockets or anything when I was a kid, but these are the SDs, like the biggest rockets you could get. And I attached him to a rocket. Will it go? It's not going to work? I'm going to have to sell it on it then. Anyway, he's attached to this XY axis, and he flies around the room. It all takes place in a matter of like a second. The nose cone blows off, the parachute pops out, and the place fills with smoke, basically. And I did this in Vox in Philly on a First Friday, which is like a big Friday gallery night. And the place was packed, and all these people just screaming for more. It was really absurd because I thought we were going to get shut down by the fire department. Anyway, this is another part of it. This is like this inflatable, one of the early inflatables. It uses a model airplane propeller and what was once a weed whacker motor that got converted to a router. And it was about the meanest balloon we've ever heard. And the viewer got to switch this on and jump back about 3 feet when it went off. Here's another version of this guy where this time the wires are live up here, so the sparks fly around the room as he flies around, and he really cruises. He really flies. This is this piece, sort of again with the clown and sort of the Janus figure, this duality of what's going on behind sort of the humor and then sort of the human condition. This is just sort of like one campground for a clown. There's a surveillance camera up in here of this little airplane flying, and for all the world, it really does look like it's flying around in the clouds as this kicks on. It vibrates and the balloon kind of rotates and stuff like that. Here it is. This is this dirty laundry. I talked to somebody at VCU today about using wood glue over forms. This is my early attempts. Then I had a show at the ICA in Philadelphia. Again, got paired with Ugo Rondioni, a Swiss artist. But this is all my cacophony. This is my little dream in here. A couple little shots. I know I could fly through this stuff for John. But this guy here, this Minotaur, he's set to the ceiling here, and a timer. Originally I thought I could use like a mercury switch to get him to, he flies back and forth into space, like this huge spin. And this guy kicks off as well and sort of slams into this big balloon. Kind of chaotic, and this is my little wedding bed, little perpetual wedding beds and, wedding beds. Earlier and then later. So, it's kind of funny, like, in some sense, in your early 20s, some people have longer relationships with their mattresses than they do with their partner. But this is another, so that kind of instinct-oriented work where we're sort of playing off your natural instincts of either, those sort of nocturnal emissions or whatever. I started studying like pheromones, and these are my little nose men. They're sort of these Roman characters, and they're all up in the rafters, and I got them all over the place. Sort of like they broke in, again, like little tricksters in a way, but really sort of more fed purely by instinct and nature. And this is another pheromone piece. This is a pheromone trails, and this stuff here is well, we have another shot. So this sort of Harry Balzac guy is, this is a butter made of mugwort and a tincture made with mugwort. And mugwort, at one point, hops was illegal and it was used in beer and stuff, but it also induces the dream state and has been used in the brewing of, I think it's called Druid, like really old beers and stuff. And it really does it doesn't knock you out and you all of a sudden dream. It's like when you do go to bed later, you have these great dreams. So this was sort of this concept of like, in a weird way, your tongue and your nose are sort of connected, and they're the shortest distances to your brain. They're the oldest sort of, it has a more direct tap to sustenance and procreation and things like that. And and so it was sort of like trying to tell a dream in a weird way through sense. You have some of your strongest memories through smell and stuff like that. So we're sort of playing more around with that. I should go back for 1 second. Sorry, John. But this sort of like, sorry, not good with this. This is this nose on the ground that's sort of breathing on a timer in and out of this. So this whole thing sort of slowly inflates and slowly moves, almost like a fog rolling in and rolling out. Anyway, let's click ahead. This was the first piece where I met John, and this is Alice that I've done. It's based loosely on Alice in Wonderland. I got to study Lewis Carroll's drawings and photography that were at the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia, one of the original editions and everything. It's really amazing. And it's funny because you had the Sally Mann show here. And I was looking at Balthus and Sally Mann and these sort of this figurative work in the modeling and making of this. She's sort of Krishna blue and is a cyclops, and in a way that I think about it, it's more that it's more surrealist, and in a sense Alice falls into the rabbit hole and falls into her unconscious, and here I'm kind of just trying to use that mind's eye for that vehicle, that hole, in a sense, the rabbit hole. But it's really sweet. It worked out like that. Matisse's Woman in Blue Dress is right here, and then that was Solowitz. So coming down the hall was a really sweet little thing. And John has it later, but she would blow up and deflate too. So she'd go from this sort of like really cherubic kind of 3-year-old body into like this old wrinkled monster. So at the same time, after doing this wonderful thing with the PMA and with the Fabric Workshop in Philadelphia, it was all for this show to honor the Fleischer Art Memorial. And there were like 400 artists or something. And they wanted me to be in that space as well. But I didn't want to take, since I was hogging this great space at PMA, I didn't want to take up any good space. So I took this back sink. And in some ways, this is the piece, it's Jack. And it's kind of like slaying, David and Goliath. Like, there was a little bit of frustration, John, in working with the PMA. Not in a bad way, but just like having to meet before an entire board, and when you're so used to doing everything yourself and just doing it, and like having to sell them on these different ideas. So there was a little bit of cathartic liberation there. And at the same time that Alice was there, she was also at New Langton, and this is another little monorail setup of like these flying green pants and this little rabbit. And here's a model. Here's the sort of mold for Alice, and I've turned her into a pair of eyes and a surveillance system. And here you see it. That's looking through the mold at everything in the gallery. And it's sort of like a collage. I mean, it's sort of bringing everything together. As you can see, you've seen some of this stuff before. This was the gallery blow art that my friend Richard Harrod and I had for a year, I guess. And it wasn't so much a gallery as kind of a show space. We weren't really trying to make any money at this. But it was 3,500 square feet. And for the last show, Richard and I put on a show called Death, Death, Death of Blow Art. And so here's my little smoking bed, which I could get to blow smoke rings every once in a while. Not in this picture, though. You might see traces of one right there, but I don't know. And here's my monkey suit, sort of like a power suit, and a little bit of that man in nature stuff again. My little runny nose.